Hello and welcome to a video about a video. So there was a video that came out today from Linus Tech Tips where Linus and his team looked through some setups that were posted into r/HOMELAB, which is a group on Reddit focused on people doing home lab stuff. And this channel features a lot of things that are really home lab related. And in fact, the thumbnail for that video included a picture of my home lab. And so I thought it'd be worthwhile to talk a little bit about HOMELABs and some of the things that came up in that video. I think the goal of the video was just to look through some of the different setups that people had posted pictures of and talk a little bit about what's either good or bad about them. And I think in many cases they're mostly surprised how much stuff people would build in their home lab, and that's always true for someone who isn't really familiar with that home lab concept. I think by far the most common question that they kind of hinted at along the way is, well, what do you use it for? And certainly in the case of my home lab, people ask that all the time. Even if they see a video, they kind of wonder, well, why would you have that much stuff? Or what do you do with it? And so this first question we'll try to answer is, well, what do you do with a home lab? And what do I do with my home lab? And what do I think other people do with their home labs? And I'll mention that on the Reddit group, our home lab, that's like a really common thing is someone will come in and ask a question like, I want to build a home lab to do this. And other people will contribute and say, well, you could buy this piece or that piece, or you can get this on eBay. And it really is a very constructive forum and a place for people to ask questions across all different levels. There are some people focused on really low power home labs where they want to have the entire thing under 20 watts or under 30 watts. And that spans from there all the way up to the, well, crazy home labs like mine. And so it really is a great place to ask questions, and everyone is always interested in helping to teach and to learn. And so that's really the first thing is, what do you do in your home lab? Well, you have a home lab primarily because you want an environment to learn in. So in some cases, you could be an IT professional who does this for a living. Maybe you're a network engineer or a system engineer, and you want to learn the next things coming down the pipeline. Maybe your environment at work is all virtualization and you want to learn containers. And so having a home lab is a great way to get into that. You can buy some inexpensive hardware on eBay and set it up, and then you learn a little bit about the hardware setup and the physical layer and the networking layer. And eventually you get to the software layer and the automation and the Ansible and Terraform and all the other tools you might use to do deployments. And along the way, you get to learn things. Now, you could, by the way, just take your laptop. I mean, a really nice Mac laptop. You could run a virtualization on here, and you could do everything in a virtualized environment. But you are missing one of the elements of building the actual equipment itself, understanding how it interconnects, understanding things like storage and storage arrays and how fast they are or how slow they are. And it honestly just isn't as much fun more than anything else. And so building a home lab is about having an environment where you can go do these things and learn about different technologies. Now for my home lab, I did build it in part to learn. And every day that I do something in there, I'm learning something new. I just recently switched from 40 gig to 100 gig. And so it was a lot of cool learning about 100 gig technology and how to make it work well and how to make it scale. So learning is an important thing, but I also do some work in my home lab. And this is not work related to my professional career, it's work related to my hobby career. One of the hobbies being that I like doing some math computations. And so I have a collection of servers that I use just for math stuff. And there are a couple of videos, I'll put a link to it in the description, I've done on my channel about using some servers for doing some math related stuff. And so in some cases I have some machines I set up, particularly ones that have a lot of memory and a lot of storage, for a very particular task that I want them to run. Now, I could just buy that computation in a cloud server, for instance, but I really like having everything here, especially in terms of having lots of storage, to have it locally. So it's really as a choice in my case to make it something where I could both have a place to do some cool, fun work stuff and also a place where I can learn along the way. And lastly, to be clear, it is just kind of nerdy fun. And so, of course, I'm a nerd and I like the nerdy, geeky stuff of building servers. I mean, that's all part of the task of being an engineer. I think that, if you're in IT every day, and I think some of the comments on the video mentioned this, you may not want to come home every day to another whole lab of stuff you have to maintain. And that's a reasonable thing, actually. In my case, I have separated my home lab stuff really into two very distinctive things. One are the things that I really need to keep my house running and to keep my wife and my daughter happy and not mad at me. And that stuff I'm very careful with. I don't upgrade it very often. I make sure it's very reliable. I have it set up to be highly redundant. And if I go on travel for a week or 2 weeks, that stuff all runs perfectly. And so one is I put some effort into having that stuff be very independent and capable of running. And then the second stuff is the stuff I have is my HOMELAB stuff. One thing is that, of course, it could fail in some way, and so it may not work for a week if I can't get to it. But more so is that I spent a lot of time, and I think this is one of the great things about a HOMELAB is you can spend time working on automation. So I had the lab really highly automated for failure states. The power goes out and my batteries kick in and the batteries are going to run out and the generator isn't running for some reason. I have a lot of automation on all of the safe shutdowns. All of my backups are automated. Backups to backups, backups to offsite, maintenance of the servers, all of those things are automated. And that makes it easier so that the actual amount of time I have to spend on a given day, I might go a week sometimes, and the server room just runs itself perfectly. And that's really a focus on, I try to avoid doing anything without also including it into automation. And if you do that, then the amount of time you spend doing sort of the more mundane IT tasks is a little bit less. I think that if you automate things along the way, you also learn the things you missed when things fail. And I think there was a great video that Jeff Geerling had about having a power outage in his building and you're discovering, oh, well, this one thing I didn't think of doing, and that's a great way to learn. There was one other thing that came up in the LTT video, which is kind of funny. Someone said, well, yeah, you know, this is because Jeff's a CTO, and so he doesn't get to do this stuff at work, and so, you know, it's his way to do stuff at home. And that is somewhat true. I mean, as a CTO, you're responsible for a wide range of technology and technology staff. There's, you know, things you do in production environments, and you have staffs of people to do those things, and so it's true that it's not that often I'm going into a data center to rewire something, although I do occasionally like to do that if I can. But I think more importantly is that as a CTO, it's my responsibility to be technical. The T in CTO is for technical, not for something else. And so I think it's very important for me to always be able to do the jobs for which I am responsible for. I may not do those jobs as well, and certainly I don't do the jobs every day, but I do believe it's really important for me to maintain those skills. If I can't configure a router, if I can't understand how BGP works, if I don't know how virtualization or containerization works, I honestly don't think you can be a very good CTO. And so for me, the lab itself is a place for me to always try to keep my skills ahead of the technologies that we're going to use, which I think is a really important thing for a CTO. And so with that in mind, I'll put a link to the LTT video in the description. And if you have any other questions about my HOMELAB or HOMELABs in general, please put them in the comments and I will attempt to answer them as best as I can.